If I had to summarize last week's discussion, the conclusion was anti-Semitism is strange. Anti-Semitism is weird, right? Even just the word itself is unusual. The fact that there is a specific word for a specific kind of racial hatred, right? Other ethnic groups or religious groups don't get their own word. The Jews are special. That's part of the problem. Okay. We also mentioned, or Steph also mentioned last week, the idea that there are at least 4 unique aspects to anti-Semitism. Okay, the first one we mentioned was the idea of longevity. Yeah, all the way back, going back to the earliest days of the Jewish people. Yeah, to Jacob and his brother Esav, to Yitzhak and his brother Ishmael. Right, there was a thing called Jew hatred in the world, and it's been every generation since. We talked about universality. The idea that no matter where we've been, in every country, in every society, in every religious group that we've been around, there's been anti-Semitism. We talked about the idea of the intensity of anti-Semitism is strange. It's not that they just don't like us. They want to kill us. And not just some of us, all of us. And not just all of us, the men, the women, the children, like everything. Right? That's unusual. And then the 4th thing we mentioned was the irrationality of it. The idea that every reason is a reason to hate the Jews. Yeah, like just, hate the Jew first and then decide on the reason. Yeah, we mentioned that last week. The other thing we mentioned was the idea of the differences between reasons and excuses. There are many, many reasons that are given for anti-Semitism. Okay, we mentioned 7 last week. But if you look at each of them and you look at it really closely, you see that it's not the reason, it's an excuse. Okay. So for example, we mentioned economic ideas. Yeah, they hate us when we're rich, they hate us when we're poor, right? But the point is that no matter what our economic status, they still hate us, right? So economics is an excuse, it's not a reason. Okay, we talked about the idea of chosen people. Yeah, maybe they don't like us because there's this notion that Jews are special. The problem is that even when we don't think we're special, even when we assimilate, they still hate us. That can't be what it is.
They must think we're special.
Okay, could be. I mean, that,
Jealous of
and therefore they want to kill us.
Yeah, you almost, if you obviously exuding jealousy, you do want to, not necessarily killing.
But you would think that would be based on the fact that we think we're special. If we don't think we're special, why would anyone else think we're special?
Because they see how much we've achieved and how long we've come. And how sort of lucky and resilient we are. Because remember last week we said that we weren't even allowed to have any other jobs, but then somewhat we decided to lend money.
Right. So the thing about anti-Semitism is it's not usually historians who know Jewish history and are the ones who are the greatest anti-Semites.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, meaning, your average Polish peasant or, their anti-Semitism didn't come from the fact that they knew that Jews have had a 3,500 year long history, and what I'm saying, like it really wasn't that intellectual. We talked about the idea of being outsiders, that even when we assimilate and we become insiders, yeah, they still hate us. Yeah. We talked about the idea of anti-Zionism, that maybe it's all about Israel. The problem is, of course, that anti-Semitism existed long before Israel existed as a state. Yeah? And we talked about the idea of race. Well, the problem with that, of course, is that there is no Jewish race. There are Jews of every race. They don't hate us just because we're, white Europeans. They hate us when we're, dark-skinned Asians or any other nationality, any other race as well. Okay, so the conclusion we came to was that anti-Semitism is crazy, and we can't blame any of the things that we've mentioned so far. We can't attribute the cause of anti-Semitism to any of these things. Okay, that's where we got to last week. So this week I want to talk about the actual reasons for anti-Semitism. I want to divide this up into the reasons that we're not going to talk about tonight, at least not initially. We can talk about it later if you want, and the reasons that we are going to talk about. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. we live in a world of physicality and spirituality. And both things are happening at the same time, right? If a person drops a bowling ball on their foot, so the reason why they hurt their foot is because of gravity, right? Which is to say, if you drop a bowling ball on your foot, don't blame God. You know what I'm saying? Now, it doesn't mean that God couldn't drop a bowling ball on your foot. It doesn't mean God couldn't have stopped the bowling ball from falling on your foot. But it's more likely the fact that you dropped the bowling ball on your foot that's the cause of the pain in your foot right now. So there are some reasons for things that can be explained using natural terms. In Hebrew, you'd call it derech hateva, the natural cause of events. Okay? But then there are deeper spiritual reasons for things. Okay? I want to talk about the spiritual reasons tonight. Now, I am going to talk about the natural causes because I just want to make it clear that we're not avoiding those. We're not saying those things aren't also problems. Okay? But I don't want to talk about those tonight. So, for example, we could talk about the modern state of Israel. And we could talk about how the modern state of Israel is not perfect. Right? People make mistakes. And there are things that Israel has done that are regrettable. That's a good way to put it. Right? And we could talk about why those things might have caused people to dislike the Jewish people. Yeah? And that would be a valid discussion. You know, I'm okay to have that discussion afterwards, but I don't want to get bogged down in that discussion tonight. Another example would be, say, media bias. Right? We could spend the whole night talking about media bias. Media bias is a real thing. It's a real problem. There's a double standard. The world treats Israel just, you know. But it is also a legitimate explanation for anti-Semitism. Right? If all you watched all day was CNN, BBC, and ABC, there's a good chance you would, you know, have some resentment, some anger towards Israel. Right? So I think we could have a reasonable discussion about that. Again, it's not addressing the question of, well, why is there media bias? And how is that fair? But it is addressing the question of what causes anti-Semitism. We could talk about intersectionality, anti-colonialism, wokeness, all this sort of stuff, claiming metaphor, you know, queers to Palestine, that are being lumped on the back of the Palestinian people. Yeah, and again, I'm not saying it makes sense, and I'm certainly not saying it's justified. I'm just saying we could talk about it as one of the real reasons for anti-Semitism. Okay? I think also we could just talk about, like, you know, some people are just stupid. You know, some people are just brainwashed. Some people have had a bad education. Some people are just like xenophobic. They just don't like strange people. And like, and it's just a reality. Like, as much as we want to pretend that everybody in the world is these, you know, upper class intellectuals who went to good schools, who know how to analyze and critique and, you know, debate like Gentile, like it's just not like that. Okay, that's what I don't want to talk about tonight. Here's what I do want to talk about. I want to talk about the real reasons from a spiritual perspective for anti-Semitism. Okay, and this is what you're not going to hear
on the news.
Certainly not on the news, and even not necessarily in other Jewish environments either. If we want to understand real anti-Semitism, so the best person to learn it from is Hitler. Now, let's understand it. People make a mistake about Hitler, by the way. People think that Hitler was crazy. Meaning Hitler wasn't a person who did random things because he was nuts. He didn't walk down the street, you know, smelling telephone poles, right? No, he didn't, though. That's what I'm saying. He didn't. He was a very well thought out person, okay? He had a very clear political strategy for how he came to power. Wasn't accidental. He had a strategy, okay? You know, he brought Germany out of hyperinflation. He conquered all of Europe in a matter of years. You know, he had a vision for what he wanted to accomplish, and he had a plan to get there. That's what I mean when I say he wasn't crazy. Okay? In fact, Hitler did not like anti-Semites who were irrational. It bothered him because he felt there were legitimate reasons to be anti-Semitic, and he didn't like it when people were just anti-Semitic for no reason. He had reasons. And by the way, it's a mistake also to think that Hitler's anti-Semitism was based upon political considerations. Because Hitler's hatred of the Jews well and truly shot him in the foot. Right? There's an argument to be made that the Nazis lost the war because of their obsession with killing Jews. Right? Germany needed those resources to fight the war, particularly on the Russian front, and instead they were using them in killing Jews. Okay? So let's have a look at some of the things that Hitler said. Now let's start at the end here. This is, Hitler committed suicide April 29, 1945. Okay? In his bunker in Germany, the Russians were almost there. So as...
Germany.
What's that?
Almost in Germany.
Almost at the bunker. They're in Berlin already, yes. I mean, it was over. The only question was, was he going to be taken alive or taken dead? So he chose to be taken dead.
Can I ask one quick question on that?
Sure.
Apparently they never found his body, so how did they know he committed suicide?
Okay, I don't know the answer to that question, but that sounds like a great conspiracy theory for the internet.
Okay.
When you said they didn't find the body, I don't think that's true.
Right.
I think the Russians destroyed his body.
Right.
Okay, says Hitler, his final address to the German people. Says Hitler like this. Okay, of all Germans, all National Socialists, men, women, and all the men of the forces, that they should be faithful and obedient unto death to the new government and its president. Okay, that's like a fairly reasonable thing to say right before you hand over the reins of power to the next guy, shall we say.
If you're a tyrant, sure.
Calling on Germans to be loyal to his successor.
Why was it at 4 a.m.?
Because that's when the Russians were about to enter. So, like, that's just what, like, you know, he got up early to walk the dog. Like, I don't, like that's when it happens.
It's interesting that it's all... Anyway.
It's well documented. I mean, it was a public broadcast. So, you know, like...
He was about to die, Gabby. Are you surprised that while he was insomniac? He was about to kill himself.
Wow.
Continues Hitler in his final words. Above all, I charge the leaders of the nation and those under them to scrupulously observe of the laws of race and to merciless opposition to the universal poisoner of all people, international Jewry.
What does that mean? Kill all the Jews.
At this point, it's over for Hitler, it's over for the Nazis, it's over for Germany. Okay? Like, why is he still blaming the Jews? Like, it's the stupidest thing.
It's pathetic.
And what does he mean, the universal poisoner of all peoples? Like, gotta get one more dig in right before he goes. Like, this is the last words out of Hitler's mouth.
Right.
This is the end of the 1,000-year Reich. Like, everything's fallen apart. And he's still on about the Jews. You know, like, let it go already. Let's jump back 12 years before this point. Okay, 1923, sorry, 22 years. Back to 1923 in Nuremberg. Yeah?
How old was he when he died? I forgot to ask roughly what.
I don't know. Does anybody know?
Can I Google it?
Yeah. I'll guess 55, but I have no idea.
That much later. Oh.
I don't know. Says Hitler in 1923, unless we expel the Jewish people soon, they will have Judaized our people within a very short time.
That's a great word.
It's a made-up word. Judaized. Judaized. Maybe Judaized?
Right,
So
right.
you
I'm gonna
have a
use
bad
that from now on.
translation from German.
True, he didn't say it in English. That's true.
Yeah.
Judaized. Judaized. It's a really weird word because you know what it sounds like? It sounds like missionizing. It sounds like Hitler's saying, if we don't kill the Jews, they're going to missionize our people and we'll all be Jewish. That's weird, no?
He felt very threatened.
Like, I don't know much about Jews, but I didn't really see there was a big missionary movement in Germany to missionize and, you know, convert Germans to, like...
Really never met a rabbi.
Okay, he probably had.
I understand the previous comment, and this comment sounds strange, like even in his death, but at the same time, they also seem pretty consistent with someone who is responsible for the death of more Jews than anyone. Like they seem pretty consistent with somebody of Adolf Hitler's mindset.
Yeah.
Like how stoic he would have been to the very end. What do you
Yeah.
think his last words would have been? Those Jews don't know how to make a good bagel. I mean, you know, he would have been.
But why did you have to mention the Jews at all?
Because he would have been stoic to the very end. I mean, he spent all those years trying to exterminate the Jews. You know, that quote sounds pretty consistent with someone of his mind.
It sounds consistent, but it's also irrational. Of all the things you could mention on your deathbed, and another thing, that guy who bullied me in grade 2, you know, like.
While I agree when we talk about that definition of crazy and Hitler, he was very organised, he was very calculated, right?
Yeah.
His obsession with Jews and wanting to kill Jews isn't normal.
Totally. Agreed.
Like,
yes.
it
Agreed.
isn't.
Yes.
That's quite
And
stalkerish
That in
by
itself
today's-
is kind of, you know... Like,
But again, it's not that, you know,
he was
some people...
that level of obsession.
But just to appreciate it's not that, you know, some people collect buttons and Hitler liked killing Jews, right?
Yeah.
Hitler had a rationale for what he was doing. Okay?
In his mind.
Good. That's all I care about right now.
Right. In his mind. It
That's
wasn't
fine. That's fine. That's fine.
But it's not normal to have that kind of obsession with Jews.
Well,
So
do you
these
know what? There are
sentences,
many
I mean-
these
sentences for that
sentences
obsession.
kind of makes.
I
I mean,
don't-
he built an entire army
He's in his
and
mid-
propaganda and concentration
He's in his
camps
mid-thirties.
and labour camps.
1923.
So he
did
died in his
so
50s?
much.
Yeah.
He did so much. I mean, talk about a motivated human
Good.
being.
Good. But
He did so much in the name of hating Jews.
yes, and that's the point. That's what we're talking about now. Not because, by the way, Hitler was the only one in history to have this, right? We have the same discussion about Hamas right now. And there are going to be some great quotes that are kind of come out, right? How, you know, despite everything, they still want to kill more Jews. Right? Well, Hitler's a good one because he's well documented. The irony of all this also is that if you know anything about Germany in the 1930s, it was one of the most assimilated Jewish communities in the world, right? I assure you the Jews in Germany weren't trying to convert Germans to Judaism. The opposite. The Jews in Germany in the 1930s, right, were trying to become as little Jewish and as more German as possible. Yeah? But Hitler's got this idea of being Judaized by the Jewish people. I know, it's a made-up word, but whatever. You know what it means. Says Hitler, "It is true, we are barbarians. This is an honored title to us. I free humanity from the shackles of the soul, from the degrading suffering caused by the false vision called conscience and ethics." Continuing, "The Jews have inflicted 2 wounds on mankind, circumcision on its body and conscience on its soul. They are Jewish inventions." Hitler is really angry about this. He's really frustrated about the influence of the Jews, specifically things like conscience, morality, Jewish values, right? Meaning, let's understand what's going on here. The Jewish utopian messianic vision, right? All of that, like, we'll all be holy people, act in godly ways, peace on earth, brotherhood of mankind, yeah, like all that sort of like make the world a better place stuff. That's what the Jews represent. Hitler says, we're barbarians. Yeah? Survival of the fittest. Pagan society. His issue is not with gefilte fish and matzo balls. His issue is this thing with, how did he phrase it? Hitler says, I'm here to free humanity from the shackles of the soul. The false vision called conscience and ethics. Those are Hitler's telling us what his problem with the Jews is. Those things are shackles on our souls. You know what them Jews want? They want us to be better people. They want us to be kind people. They want us to take care of the sick and the poor and the old. They want us to have universal education. They want us to love each other and be kind to each other. Hitler says, I don't want to do those things. I want to be a barbarian. I want to have a free soul from the shackles to do whatever I want. When Hitler says, if we don't kill the Jews, they will Judaize us. What he means is they will give us a conscience.
They will give us morale.
They will give us morality. They will expect us to act in certain ways and be nice to each other and take care of each other. Says Hitler, the war for domination of the world is waged only between the two of us. Between these two camps alone, the Germans and the Jews, everything else is but a deception. This is like Star Wars stuff, right? Like, it's like the Jedi versus Sith, right? This is like light and dark, good and evil. Yeah, it's not just Hitler who says this. Jean-Paul Sartre, famous French philosopher, said the following. He, talking about the anti-Semites, is a man who is afraid of his own consciousness, of his liberty, of his instincts, of his responsibilities, of solitariness, okay, of change of the world. Anti-Semitism, in short, is fear of the human condition. What he's saying is that, yeah, in fancy philosopher words, is that those things about yourself that you don't like, to hate them is anti-Semitism.
It didn't help that he was Jewish.
Jews can also be insightful. What can I tell you? Like,
Looks like a French Rodney Dangerfield.
okay. Yeah. Here's another good one. This is from a guy, Franklin Little. He's written books on anti-Semitism and things like that in the Holocaust. Listen to this. Anti-Semitism is a rebellion against God. Christian anti-Semitism is a rebellion against the Jewish God. It is a hatred of the law, meaning the Torah. Christians can't hate Jesus, but they can hate the Jewish God and they can hate the law, the Torah. Their hatred of the Jew is hatred of the people that reminds them of their failing. Anti-Semitism is when you don't like that part of you and you don't want to be that part of you, you hate the Jew.
That makes more sense to me.
Again, Christians aren't going to walk around saying, I hate Jesus. Because Jesus didn't tell Christians to do anything specific. There's no mitzvahs in Christianity. One sec. Whatever you want to do, as long as you're a good people, a good person, that's okay. Right? Judaism has a very specific set of definitions and instructions for how you are a holy person, a good person. If you don't want to do those things, that's called anti-Semitism. Dennis Prager, we've talked about it before. Dennis Prager, Das will tell. He has an American radio show. He has a thing called Prager University. He's pretty good actually. Says Dennis Prager, to the anti-Semite, the Jews are the embodiment of fundamental moral values of the Western world. It is those values and ultimately all those who hold those values that anti-Semites seek to destroy. It's about values and it's about the people who transmit those values. This is the distinction I was trying to make. There are reasons, natural reasons, and then there are underlying spiritual reasons. Now we're getting into the underlying spiritual reasons. It could be people are not necessarily conscious of these things. Some people more so, some people less so, yeah? Okay. Okay, so Anne Frank's a Jewish girl. She's Dutch. She hides in an attic of a non-Jewish family for most of the Holocaust. Eventually she's found, goes to a concentration camp and eventually dies there. But Anne Frank kept a diary. Her father, after the war, found the diary and published it. You know, probably the best known account, first-hand account of experiences during the Holocaust. Says Anne Frank in her diary, who knows? It might even be our religion from which the world and all the peoples learn good. And for that reason and that reason only do we now suffer. Again, Anne Frank, who's not a religious girl, by the way, is keying in on this idea that the Jews have an impact on the world, right? We're here to teach good, as she puts it. And maybe that's why we're suffering. Maybe that's why they hate us. There's something about Jewish values and conscience and morality and ethics that makes people angry at the Jews. Okay, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to another primary source. When the Jews leave Egypt, they're on the way to the land of Israel. Moses is still in charge at this point. And they fight against a nation called Midian. Midian is one of the neighbors of the land of Israel. And when Moses is giving the army their instructions to go out and fight against Midian. So Moses says to them, go out and fight against the enemies of God. Now, Midian was attacking the Jewish people. Midian wasn't attacking God, whatever that would look like. So the commentators there explain, Rashi says, whoever stands against Israel is as if they're standing against God. In other words, what Rashi is saying, the great medieval commentator Rashi, is saying, hatred of Jews is really hatred of God and morality and God's values. Yeah? Like we're the canary in the coal mine. The Talmud asks the question, where does anti-Semitism come from? The Talmud answer as it says Sinai. Okay? The word for hatred in Hebrew is sina, which is very closely related to the word Sinai. Sinai and Sina. Okay? So the Talmud says like this. Yeah, Sinai, as in Mount Sinai, as in when we got the Torah, is where Sina, where hatred of Jews comes from. It's this same idea. Yeah?
So you're turning a negative into a positive?
The other way around, turning a positive into a negative. Meaning the non-Jewish world is looking at the Torah as a source of morality and ethics in the world and saying, no, thank you. We don't like that. Not only don't we like the message, we don't like the messenger. So the first point I wanted to bring out tonight was this idea of, let's understand, the thing that the Jews represent in the world is godly values, ethics, morality, all that sort of stuff. And either consciously or subconsciously, there's a lot of people who don't like those ideas, and therefore they don't like them. Second idea. This one will offend you, I promise you. Okay. Goes like this. Abraham, the first Jew. When Abraham is 70 years old, okay, he has a prophetic experience with God. God appears to him, and they make a deal. Essentially, God says, Abraham, I like where you're going. I like your values. I like the idea that you are a godly person and you are trying to teach the world to be more moral. God says, I want to make a special relationship with you. Okay? That really is the covenant, the first covenant between God and the Jewish people. Okay, God says this is not just a covenant, not just a deal between you and me. It's between me and your generations, your descendants thereafterwards. Yeah, you'll be a special people. You will inherit the land of Israel. Yeah, God says he will have a special relationship with the Jewish people. Okay. And the Torah describes this event. The problem is like this. How could God promise a special relationship with the Jewish people for all time? Because what if Abraham's descendants don't want to have a special relationship with God? So is God going to take away their free will and force them to have a relationship? Force them to be the special people? So God says, I'm not going to force you to have a relationship with me, because if I force you, then it's not a relationship, right? However, I am going to incentivize you. Okay? I've talked about this idea before, the idea of guardrails. Guardrails are really interesting. If you ever drive on a country road and there's a drop-off, so what do? They build a guardrail on the side of the road. What's the purpose of that guardrail? The purpose of the guardrail is to stop you driving off the cliff, right?
Second
Now,
layer of security.
second layer?
Well, the first aim is to drive straight and
Yes.
do
Okay.
everything, but just
Good. Stay in the middle of the road. The problem is you start nodding off. It's been a long day. Okay? First you start blinking, then the blinks get longer and longer, right? And you careen off the road, and you're about to go off the cliff, and what happens? You hit the guardrail. Now, it's not fun hitting the guardrail, right? It dents your car or whatever. But is it better than the alternative? Yeah, it's much better than the alternative. Right? When you get out of your car, you don't say, curse you, guardrail, for scratching my car. You say, thank God there was a guardrail there. Okay? Watch this video. Okay? This is why you need guardrails. This is rally car racing.
I've seen something like this before. Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, I've seen it.
Okay? That's why you need a guardrail. Because if the guardrail wasn't there, he rolls down the hill and it's bad all the way down. It hurts a lot, yes. And at some point it stops hurting, which is even worse.
Or it doesn't.
That's what I was saying. If it doesn't hurt, that's bad.
Yeah.
Okay, in a spiritual sense, anti-Semitism is like guardrails.
I was like, what?
As long as the Jewish people stay in the middle of the road, then we don't need the guardrails. If we start veering towards the edge, then the guardrails are there to stop us from going over the edge. It's moving away from God and not wanting to have that special relationship. Now, again, I preface this by saying everyone will find this offensive, okay? So I'm okay with this.
Oh, well, no.
Process your anger,
It's not,
okay?
it's not the first time I've heard you say this.
You didn't have a disclosure on the
I am
screen.
consistent.
Yes, you are.
You didn't have a disclosure on the screen. Okay.
That's one thing you are.
Okay.
Is consistent.
All right, go for it. Get ready, everyone. Roll.
The message of anti-Semitism is, we the Jewish people are in this world for a purpose. Okay? We are here to make the world a better place. We are here to make the world a more moral place. We are here to make the world a more holy place. One sec. Okay? And God says, I will not let you destroy yourself by turning away from that mission. Okay? Now, God doesn't say, I'm going to punish you if you don't. Right? God's like, this is not like lightning bolts. God says there are guardrails on the road. If you try to drive off the spiritual cliff,
Oh, don't you come?
the guardrails will catch you. It might hurt a little,
So-
might hurt a lot, but it's a lot better
So,
than if there were no guardrails. Let me show you one more place where you see this clearly. Albert Einstein, yeah, Jewish guy, not particularly observant. Yeah, okay. I was going to say also, no, didn't think like a Jew either. Yeah.
like Sammy Davis.
Says Albert Einstein, when I first came to Germany 15 years ago, I discovered for the first time that I was a Jew. And I owe this discovery more to Gentiles than to Jews. If we did not have to live amongst intolerant, narrow-minded, and violent people, I'd be the first to throw of all nationalism in favor of universal humanity. What Albert Einstein is saying is the reason why I'm Jewish is because the non-Jews won't let me stop being Jewish. He's telling you where anti-Semitism comes from. We're very lucky that we live in a country where we don't really experience anti-Semitism. Like, not like real anti-Semitism. Not like the anti-Semitism of, Europe in the Middle Ages. Or Germany in the 1940s or 30s. Yeah? No, not close at all. Not even close. Our lives are not in danger. Yeah? Most people I know don't change their behavior based upon anti-Semitism in Australia. Right? We, thank God, have good jobs. We go to good universities. We live in big houses. Most of us have never experienced any economic discrimination because we're Jewish, much less physical discrimination. Okay? Life is pretty good here. And that has taken a tremendous toll on the Jewish people. Assimilation and intermarriage are rampant. Okay? As opposed to when we lived in the old country, and before that when we lived in Babylon, before that we lived in other places. Yeah? In Europe, before Napoleon, where assimilation wasn't an option, the Jews were much more focused. We were much more clear on who we were and why we had a special role in the world. I wouldn't say we should be grateful. I would say
want to be back on the straight and narrow.
I would say that we should understand what its function is. God is not here to make our lives difficult. God is here to help us make good decisions. I can tell you that in general in life, people grow when they have challenges, right? The reason people go to the gym is not because it's easy and relaxing, it's because it's only through hard work and effort that people grow and change. Yeah? People in their own lives, I hope, most people will be able to recognize that the time when they've done the most personal growth is in response to a difficult situation. This is not, anti-Semitism doesn't have to be a part of the system. It doesn't have to be something that we have to live with. Right? Anti-Semitism is something that is in response to us. Nothing gets the Jewish people focused like anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Even around the world. Yeah? I know a lot of people in Australia, a lot of Jews in Australia, who aren't Jewishly connected, but in the last month and a half have suddenly felt very Jewishly connected and wanted to express that, wanted to do something, wanted to show, whether it's give money, whether it's volunteer, participate. There is a reality here. Anti-Semitism gets our attention. It focuses us on being Jewish. It focuses on what's important in life. I'm not saying this is the explanation for every time something happens in the world or in history there's anti-Semitic. I'm saying this is one of the dynamics at play. Okay? One of the dynamics is the guardrails. One of the dynamics is, and it's a different dynamic, is the idea of shoot the messenger if you don't like the message. Okay? Those are two separate ideas. And I'm not here to tell you in any given situation which one is necessarily at play.